A very good morning and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Newsline. I'm Arundhati Mudanaka, and joining me this morning is former diplomat and senior journalist Mr. Bandula Jayasekara. Good morning, Mr. Jayasekara. And our guest this morning is Dr. Hiranti Wijayamana, former Vice Chair of the UN Monitoring Committee on the Rights of the Child and the former Chairperson of the National Child Protection Authority. Good morning, Madam.
Good morning.
And Hiranti is also expert on child rights. You know, and then you work in the expert panel, right? So now I think about Arundhati, what we are going to discuss today is something very important. I think whole of Sri Lanka is angry. The world is angry because the way little children, little flowers are being crushed by sick people. I would read Hiranti some details. Over 10 children killed within the last 14 days. Child Protection Authority received over 6,500 complaints of child abuse and neglect from 1st of January to 21st September. And let's look at the age of these perpetrators. You know, it's really sickening and will make you angry. That is the ages of these people who have harmed these children. 57, 64, 74, 36. Could you believe it? So this is a crime. Now what is happening in Sri Lanka, Hiranti?
Well, actually, I think we have to look at this whole issue from a very broad perspective. I think this is not something that happened yesterday and day before. I think this is a problem which has grown over the years. I think there have been interventions where laws have been changed. We have set up, Sri Lanka has set up women and children police desks. There are legal institutions which are looking at it. The Child Protection Authority is trying very hard with helplines, etc. But there is something obviously missing. And I think the first thing is we need to look at what is missing. Why is this happening? There are root causes. First of all, I think we have to go back to the family. I don't think we have enough protection for children within their families. This happens within a family setup. It can also happen in a school. It can happen in a tuition class. It can happen, and most of the time, these are the abusers are people who are known to the child. There is a misconception that it's a stranger. Most of the time, it is people like you said, relatives, friends of the family. It might be a teacher, it might be a tuition master, it might be, I'm sorry to say this, but in fact even religious dignitaries we know have been engaged, because those
world over, I mean not
world over, everywhere, all religions. And it is because they are people the child is taught to trust, and they betray this trust. So we need to look at this from a very broad angle. That's one. Secondly, I think our families are not being protected. Let's face it. Most of our families live in rural areas. Families have problems. They have financial problems.
So one question there, Madam, is it more in the urban areas or?
The thing is that we have most people living in the rural areas. And then there's alcohol, there's drugs. I'm sorry to say there's not just pornography, but there is child porn, and we don't even know whether this is being distributed, and there are people who distribute it for their own purpose. So,
and even internationally, that there some time ago they were promoting Sri Lanka as haven for child sex.
Definitely, Sri Lanka was a haven for the commercial sexual exploitation of children, boys particularly, and we were part of a triangle with Thailand and also with the Philippines, and there were various programs in the 1990s. To be honest, that was something that motivated the Child Protection Authority. But then when it was set up for that purpose, we discovered that there was a lot of abuse, neglect, and actually abuse meaning not just sexual abuse. There's also, we know, infanticide, there's child abandonment, and all sorts of other things also happening to innocent children. So I think this is something we really need more attention to, because we forget that, and I conveniently by many policymakers, children have a right to protection. This is not some favor we are doing to children. Under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Sri Lanka is a signatory to, children have a right to protection, and they have a right to protection from abuse, from neglect. Also, they have a right to access education, health, Some of those things we are doing.
But Hiranti, in Sri Lanka, okay, now here we are talking of rights, but here we had values, traditional, what we call traditional family values. We are brought up with love and affection. When we went home, we said, you know, you walked in saying Amma, you know, she opened the door. So those things are gone. So that's why now we have to speak of rights. Things have changed now because, I mean, this is really like both in the city and in the village.
No, Bandula, the thing is we cannot, nothing remains the same. Everything changes. And I'm afraid there's a good part of the media where they are sending good messages out. But we must admit there are bad parts of the media. Even our films, what do they show? A lot of violence. And sometimes violence against the child, violence against the women. There's too much violence also going on. And these are things that we say that that actually the television is sometimes like the third parent of the child, because every evening they are watching this. The teledrama, for example, people said whom we met once regarding this, they said we are showing reality. But then these children are watching this all the time. So there's a lot of abuse is also a form of violence. That is a stronger person taking advantage of a weaker person. So I think protection of the family is not happening.
And also shouldn't the parents, educate their daughters, explain to them, all that they have a role to play, a bigger role to play in today's
world. Basically, parents don't like to talk about sex to their children. And it's so even particularly so in the village area, because I know children have told me they have no one really to talk about it. They can't talk to the parents, they can't talk to a grandparent, they can't talk to a teacher. So they get their information from various dubious sources.
But also, but they really can tell them about the big bad wolves.
Yeah, but I don't know how much they really...
No, even I'm saying even in Colombo.
And of course, I must say alcohol and drugs also is a big factor, because when people are addicted to drugs or when they are alcoholic, they really don't know. I mean, they may not know whether they are sleeping with the daughter, the wife, or who it is, So alcohol and drugs and any kind of form of addiction can also have these effects. So while the laws are in place, our issue is that we know the laws are not being implemented. The police are desperately trying to do their best, but then there are issues for them. Legal processes are taking a long time, because at the moment every problem in the country ends up with the legal people, and I don't think that's also because they are unable to cope with it. So what we need is a much more multi-sectoral kind of, where everyone joins up. That is one. Secondly, Danuwat Kirima, making people aware and alert, having a surveillance system so that they do report and something happens before some tragedy occurs. Then protective education for children. Children need to know this is something. We teach children about, they have to learn all these subjects and we get through their O-level and A-level. They don't have what is called life skills education.
Even if they're abused, they don't know what is happening to them, and they cannot really come out with it, because they don't know that they've been abused.
No, well, they do know, but confidential reporting with counseling. That is to a person who can tell them what they should do. That I don't think is available everywhere.
But Hiranti, now you held this position as Senior Vice President of the UN, the child, the rights of the child. But now take the UN and other organized. You talk of so much of rights, right? I want to be very direct and blunt here. Now they talk of gay rights, this right, that. But what about, I remember one of the Russian ambassadors telling me, we must bring a motion on these traditional values, rights at the UN. Is UN talking bunkum here? Because what about the traditional family value? The value is the love. They are not talking of that, because the funding is for these other rights.
Yeah.
That's what is happening.
Well, that's a good point. But of course, everyone says when you talk about rights, you can't only restrict it to one group.
Yeah, but
this group is the most important group in our society, because everyone is a child at some point in your life. So I believe if things are done right for you from your birth to the age of 18, you have actually set the stage establish the foundation for a just and decent society. You have to start with the child. You can't start later. UN, well, that's a good point. I worked for UNICEF also for a long time, so I don't know what exactly to say, but this I can say.
You can say the right thing.
No, I will say, you see, the UN is also restricted in what they can do in countries. I sat in the committee for 4 years and we heard reports from X number of countries, large countries, small countries, I won't necessarily mention. And one of the things we discussed with them was the whole issue of abuse and violence and neglect. And even things like infanticide. We know sometimes in some countries, I won't mention, if the child is a girl, the child is killed in infancy. Some children are even killed in the womb because they know it's a girl. So what rights? That child doesn't even have the right to be born.
There was a campaign for the rights of the girl child, I remember.
But on the other hand, UN can do thus much, UNICEF or any organization. It is then incumbent on the country to actually carry it forward. Funds alone are not enough. Commitment. For example, I don't know, parliamentarians, how many of them really speak out for children? The children do not have a vote. They speak out for people who have votes.
Yeah, but the parliamentarians, they use children, I would say abuse, to welcome them, hot sun, garland them, give them bouquets,
carry them.
And then they carry them, photograph, but they don't care. Because what happens for years, they use, people faint, like during school function, they faint. But do they really care? They keep these children for hours. So that should be banned, Iranti. What do you think? Can we bring laws against
Well, I certainly do agree with you. I think children should be allowed. Children need love and affection. They need good protected families. They need assistance when they are studying. They need access to health. Education and health, in terms of access, I think we have done a good job, and we are always held up around the world as a country which soon after independence gave free health, free education. But beyond that, what? Because if your life is destroyed with abuse, with exploitation, all the access to education and health goes nowhere.
And on that note, doctor, you said some, these children who are victims of abuse, when they grow up, when they become adults, won't they do it to another child in return?
You see, the point is, once the child is abused, they have to have therapy, they have to have counseling, they have to have access to those services. And I'm afraid we don't have those services all over in an appropriate manner to reach out to every child, because it has to go very close to the child, and the child needs that support. Then the families need to have the knowledge on how to deal with the child. Teachers may have to have that knowledge. I'm afraid those are areas in which we have not gone to the whole country.
Yeah, we could be more open. The teachers, they lack that knowledge.
Yes, actually, unfortunately, there's a lot of sex in the media, there's sex in everything, but no one wants to talk about it. So sexual abuse is something everyone talks about when there's a rape or a killing, but no one actually talks about sexuality in our life.
This is the tragedy, Arundhati. We have banner, we have all the religious thing, and I want to say this openly. When it comes, we are saying Buddhist, we are saying Buddhist, we are fine. That's not happening. The problem is worse. Let's be honest and open about it. When it comes to that, when it suits us, we say that. But this is what is happening in this country.
Anyway,
I want to be open.
Anyway, Bandul, I think we should, let's try to be positive.
That's the thing. These are not helping. Coming back here, and now take the foreign minister, Mangala Samarveera, goes to the United Nations, right, Geneva. He says, okay, we will support the EU. We are going against the capital punishment. But President Maithripala Sirisena is under tremendous pressure, and he's been very positive to bring back the death penalty. Like, you are a mother, right? There's so much pressure. And I think President has responded positively, right? Are you for death penalty? I am for death penalty. I'm sure you're for. Are you for? And what have you got to say?
I must be honest. I'm not really sure, because I don't know whether taking the life of someone else is going to solve the problem.
But they can take the life of somebody else.
No, they have robbed. They have robbed. They have either taken the life away, or I think robbing a child of their childhood It's also taking a life away.
Yeah, that is true.
Taking
That's the
a
worst
life away.
crime.
That's the worst crime. But I think it's more than, all I'm saying is, it's more than the death penalty. It's more than improving law enforcement. It's more than having better laws or strengthening legal processes, quickening cases which are held up for, 4 years or 6 years. It is more than that. I think protection of the family. Our families are not being protected. A lot of things are happening because of situation risks in the family. Mothers not there, or fathers are alcoholic or unemployed, or they are in prison. Children of prisoners, they are a very deprived group. They are in remote areas, and all these services that we have, we seem to have so much of services. How do they actually reach this family? Because
what can we do to reach?
So we need to, first of all, I think we can't just decide. We have to do a good assessment to find out root causes. Without finding out root causes of any problem, and perhaps because I'm a medical person, and I say you have to diagnose the patient before you find the treatment.
But we have waited for so long. It's happening, and then they'll forget.
No. Things are happening, Bandula, because we are looking at it piecemeal because of an event. This event took place.
No, events. I would say events, like we had so much of.
We had tragedies, and the country was galvanized by this tragedy. And actually, we should thank the media for, whatever it is, raising the issue. But can we take this issue? These children have died tragic deaths. They have suffered badly. Families have suffered, but if we can at least take this opportunity to redo, we have to revamp, we have to reinvent what we are doing. What we are doing now is not enough, not good enough, not reaching out. Let us be honest and say we have failed.
Now on the death penalty, right now, I think personal citizen has been very positive. Right? I think people are happy about it because at last somebody is saying, okay, I put it to the parliament. He's looking at it, like you said in our singular program. He's a father.
Yes.
So this has to change because that is really the need. Whether it's you go to Independence Avenue or in the village, people are all together today. Because I think what I'm saying is, our people, sorry to say, most of the Sri Lankans are cowards. These are cowards who do this. If you punish 4 people, this will end. This is the way, as a deterrent. This is what I feel.
Maybe it will not solve the whole problem.
Let me say they are mentally disturbed and sick people, because you see, for someone to do this to a child. Definitely there's a mental problem undetected, various psychological problems undetected and unsupported, and that is so because actually there are many like this. There may be still people walking around wanting to do these kinds of things. So I think I would say we need to look at this from a much broader angle than we have done so far. We cannot, I think, restrict it just to the ministry concerned, because they are also limited. I think every ministry should be involved, because we are looking at our families, we are looking at the future generations of Sri Lanka. And while we talk now, we don't know, there may be a child, someone trying to abuse a child or already abusing a child. So we need to have a very national program, and we need to look at all the different aspects to it. And even if it takes time, make a difference. It's not a question of making a difference in one sector. We have to make a difference right and really look at all children, because I can tell you it can happen in a poor family, it can happen in a well-to-do family, it may be happening already in Colombo, we don't know, not reported, undetected, because the death itself, of course, is a dramatic event. But before the death,
so many
we don't know whether grooming has taken place. Abusers groom children. They make it very secretive so that they don't tell. A lot of steps that take place.
What is happening is people are getting scot-free. Now take this incident. I don't want to name names here, but the recent incident of the restaurant here. The child, that boy with autism, he was raped and molested, but these people have gone scot-free. So look what this child with autism has gone through.
No, that is also an important point. Definitely children with any disability. This is a case of an autistic child. It might be a child who has some other disabilities. Disabled children are definitely at greater risk. That is proven in every country in the world. So therefore, like you say, they may have reported, no action taken. The monitoring has been weak. No one has done anything. So these are all issues that we really need to, I think we need to have a war against child abuse. We had a war against terrorism. So
the war against like drugs and you know, I think this is, it has to be a really
drugs,
a platform where people are talking about it.
That's right. And I think, you know, when you read the newspapers, it's all about the big roads we are building, the hotels, the apartment complexes. Personally, I think if we don't do something for our children, all those buildings don't mean anything.
I remember, you know, I'll tell you this very famous saying by late Bishop Lakshman Wickramasinghe. You know, I remember he said, buildings and roads doesn't matter, but character. I remember as a schoolboy that famous saying of late Bishop Lakshman Wickramasinghe. Having said that, now even now we talk of children. Now these school vans, that is a big problem. Isn't it? It is a huge problem.
No, when I was a chairperson, we did catch a couple of school van people who, van drivers, who were actually exhibitionists. And these children didn't know. And one or two of them were caught. But we don't know. Children may not necessarily tell. So school van drivers, I think anyone who works with children needs to be screened, needs to be monitored, because we don't know. And certainly disabled children are definitely more at risk, because they have a mental problem or some other problem, and then they become victims. It's much easier to victimize them rather than when the child is able to run away or shout or tell someone. So that's what I'm saying. There are so many different aspects to this, and I think Bishop Lakshman was also related to me. He was just a wonderful human being, and he looked at the human. It's the human factor that's missing. Actually,
not the material.
Not the material, the hotels and the high rises, and I mean, if you look at the newspapers, it's all about material.
Then we can have a wonderful world. And I'm sure, Arundhati, as a mother, you have more questions from Dr. Vijay Mane.
Yes. Now earlier you were talking about change. Now, is it now these cases of abuse? Did it happen 50 years ago, or are we talking about it more now and then we think that there's a bigger rate?
No, I think that's a good point, because actually now with the media, it has happened over time, in memoriam. It has happened historically. But it was not reported, not highlighted, populations were less, and we didn't know. So it has been, it's not something new, it's something which was happening, and perhaps the reporting is better now, and it is something that is ingrained in all societies. So I don't think we should think it's only Sri Lankan society, it is really there all over the world. That's what actually in the committee, we actually have a separate section where we actually deal with this whole issue of child abuse, violence. Even corporal punishment, for example, is a form of child abuse. Infanticide. There are mental, emotional, we know lots of teachers create a lot of emotional abuse on children. Parents may, still people use the cane. That's a form of abuse. So we have to look at it in a much broader way. But of course this extreme form is where a child is killed, and that is a very extreme form, and it really needs us to launch a nationwide program, and most important, reach out to those families, those vulnerable families and those vulnerable children who really don't have a voice.
But it is so tragic, Arundhati. Now 1st of October is Universal Children's Day, and they also say it's the Universal Elders Day, and these elders, that we are celebrating 2 universal days.
No, Bandula, I would like to make a strong recommendation which I have and has not been well received.
Please,
and that is that this whole 1st of October thing should be changed to 20th of November. 20th of November was the day the International Convention on the Rights of the Child was ratified by Sri Lanka and globally. It was the most ratified treaty of all the human rights treaties. So that was done, and the day is the 20th of November and not the 1st of October.
But who's changed?
I don't know. I didn't go.
You work with the UN.
No, I tried to find the roots of this 1st of October, which is very nebulous. So it should be really 20th of November should be Children's Day. That is the day we signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child. That is the day that many countries signed the Convention, and where we can make a commitment that children have rights. They don't necessarily just belong to families and belong to people. They have rights as individuals. And the state has an obligation to their different institutions, and also civil society organizations to provide everything that is necessary for children to be able to grow, survive, develop, and take their place as as citizens in this country. But if that does not happen, I do not know whether we will have the development that we are all seeking.
Yeah, so we have to have a huge campaign on this, the rights of the child to educate. I mean, not only the village, but even people now take the city. The parents will give lots of money. They give cars, mobile phones, and they neglect. See, what children need is time, to spend time, remember their birthdays, talk to people. That is what's lacking. People don't communicate today anymore.
I think talk is the right word, because in fact some children tell me when out in the hinterland, in the rural area, they said, at 6 o'clock the television, I'm sorry to say, television is put, we call it the third parent, because they put the child in front of the TV and they do the other things.
And even some now give iPads.
I mean, I do it to get my work done.
Yeah, now you should stop doing that. Because from today you should stop it, because they give the iPad to play. So there is no community, there is no human factor.
So then that communication, particularly I'll tell you, when they are adolescents, sometimes a lot of children move away from the parents, and that's a very difficult period for them when they are growing up. And it's puberty, that's the time sexuality and really the questions come and they need answers and they need to know what's going on in their body. So I think we need to remedy some of those things and really look at children from a different perspective, not only at birth, early childhood, but during the schooling years, adolescence. And it is not just getting a degree and doing your O-levels well and getting your 80s that comes. It's being a self-sufficient, well-developed child who has fulfilled the potential they had when they were born.
We talked about death penalty, and death penalty really depends on the legal system of Sri Lanka. So can we really trust the legal system to hand out the death penalty?
Give us a very short answer.
No, my dear, the death penalty is there, it's not implemented.
So if we are to implement it, can we trust the legal system?
Well, I think the President has made a decision, so I'm sure he can make that decision.
Yeah, Arundhati, I think let's talk about our guest tomorrow, since we are running short of time. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Chandran Ratnam, because we are going to talk tomorrow about a legend of our times, the great Gamini Fonseca. His death anniversary falls, 11th death anniversary falls tomorrow, and he was very much a part of us. He was a politician, a man who had so much of empathy and a lovable figure. We will never have another Gamini Fonseca again. So we'll be discussing with his good friend Chandran Ratnam about Gamini Fonseca.
And on that note, I think that's all the time we have for this morning. And I would like to thank Dr. Hiranthi Wijayamana, former Vice Chair of the UN Monitoring Committee on the Rights of the Child, and also the former Chairperson of the National Child Protection Authority. Thank you, Madam, for joining us. And Mr. Jayasekara, thank you for joining us this morning as well. And we'll see you again tomorrow with Newsline.